Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by Audible. Just so you know, I will be talking about full spoilers for The Boys Season 3. So one thing that I found interesting about this season of The Boys is that under all the violence, the hero-gasm hype, and the commentary on our current political landscape, is that this story mostly ended up being about parents and parenting. Whether it's really worrying about how his actions will affect his daughter Janine, Hughie's epiphany about what strength is coming from a story about his own dad, getting insight into the way Butcher and Frenchie's fathers mistreated them, Victoria Newman betraying her adopted father and using Compound B on her own daughter, and of course, Ryan being split between two very different father figures. So much of this season revolves around just how difficult it is to be a truly good parent. And then, of course, there's Soldier Boy. On paper, the exact kind of family that Homelander has always wanted, but who goes on to only reinforce everything that Homelander already hates about himself. Before I get back into talking about their awkward father-son relationship, I should probably address what I thought about Soldier Boy himself. So when I was in high school, I loved the early seasons of Supernatural, which was created and for the first 4 years run by The Boys showrunner Eric Kripke. And even though that show went on to lose a lot of my goodwill by the end, I was still really excited to see how Kripke would use his former star Jensen Ackles here. And he didn't disappoint. Soldier Boy is a really effective, funny, and deeply cynical take on the Captain America archetype. In many ways, he shares a lot of the same traits as Homelander. He's awful and violent towards his team, he abuses his power to get what he wants, he doesn't seem to care about the collateral damage he causes, and he puts on an all-American heroic facade as his public persona. Now, the differences between them are obvious, and I do want to go back to talking about those in a bit, but I think their similarities are also worth focusing on, because it was those exact similarities that gave us Black Noir's story this season. A radical departure from the source material that I actually think worked really well. Noir's life is a pretty sad one, spending the majority of it silently behind a mask, putting up with one horrific boss after another. But he seems to have a special hatred of Soldier Boy, far more than he ever did with Homelander, who he actually seemed to have a fairly good relationship with, until he didn't. Still, I think it's safe to say that Noir feared Soldier Boy a lot more, which was probably a miscalculation, but you can kind of see why he felt that way. Noir was never a threat to Homelander's image of himself. He was never trying to upstage him like Starlight or some of the others could threaten to. And, I think most importantly in Homelander's mind, he always did what was asked of him. Homelander is desperate for people's respect and love, but he also is only able to view them as tools for his own selfish ends. Noir didn't exactly provide much love and respect, but he was one of the most reliable tools Homelander had on the Seven, and for a long time, I think that endeared Homelander to him. Because by the time Homelander was on Noir's team, the silent ninja no longer had dreams of being the next Eddie Murphy or of making a bigger name for himself. He had accepted that his lot in life was to be a quiet killer. Soldier Boy never really knew that version of Black Noir. He knew the version who still had big dreams. Which is why I think his relationship with Noir reminded me a lot more of Homelander's relationship with the Deep and A-Train, where their teammates' ambition only serves to annoy them. And it's easy to tell from the animated segments in Noir's mind that a team meeting with Soldier Boy had a lot in common with the Seven's meetings with Homelander. Everyone is really nervous, with the knowledge that extreme violence could be around the corner at any moment, to the point where even Soldier Boy's loyal teen sidekick was filing complaints behind his back. In that way, I think the two characters have a ton in common. They're both at the top of the food chain and are very willing to violently remind people of that. But where they differ is still pretty important, and it makes the twist that Soldier Boy is actually Homelander's biological father a pretty smart and interesting one. Because despite their similarities, I knew from the moment he was introduced that Soldier Boy would absolutely despise Homelander. Not because he's that much of a better person, he's not, but because Homelander is, as he's so often reminded, a gaping chasm of insecurity. In many ways, Soldier Boy isn't as overtly sadistic as Homelander, but he also possesses a trait that Homelander desperately wishes he could have, not caring what other people think about him. Where Homelander is having Gollum-like conversations with himself about his need to be loved and adored, Soldier Boy just stuffs all of his emotional problems deep, deep down. Homelander will often wear his neediness on his sleeve, something that Soldier Boy cannot respect. That obvious insecurity is also what Stan Edgar, who is easily the closest thing to a father figure that Homelander's had, also throws at him in their last scene together. In the span of a few episodes, Homelander is basically told he's pathetic by two of the few people he actually respected. Of course, it's no accident that what Soldier Boy tells Homelander mirrors his story to Butcher about what his father told him over 50 years ago, that he's a disappointment. This is told to us in one of the few scenes where Soldier Boy actually opens up a little, and it's obvious these words impacted him so much that he still hangs on to them over half a century later. But he's also very willing to say that to Homelander like it's nothing. That dynamic is pretty interesting to me, and it's one of the things that helped keep this character from being a funny but one-dimensional villain. His view of himself actually reminded me of the type of guy that Tony Soprano describes in Therapy in the pilot of The Sopranos. Gary Cooper, the strong silent type who didn't need to be in touch with his feelings. As far as Soldier Boy is concerned, that's him. To him, the idea that he has PTSD is ridiculous, even if it's also clearly true. And while believing in that vision of himself does make Soldier Boy far more confident than Homelander, it's also just not accurate. While he does repress all those darker feelings, he isn't actually successful at it. In fact, the show makes that incredibly literal, having him stuff those feelings down until they explode, killing people around him. Then he shrugs, goes on with his day, and eventually does it again. So while on the surface there's a huge difference between Homelander and Soldier Boy, the end result for those around them is almost always the same. Tons of lashing out that ends in senseless violence and death. I think one of the things that makes The Boys so effective as a drama is that any situation with a Supe involved could end horribly. Homelander brings a real uneasy tension to every scene he's in, as everyone is walking on eggshells around him, making sure they massage his ego, because most of them have seen what happens to those who don't. Soldier Boy has a lot of those same qualities, but coming from a totally different perspective. In the world of The Boys, acts of actual superheroism are few and far between, like Maeve saving everyone in the finale. Much more commonly, the superheroes themselves have to be treated like sentient bombs that could go off at any second. And I think that's why Hughie's pizza roll speech to Annie near the end of the season was so surprisingly effective. He describes a moment where his dad was barely holding it together, but got through it anyway for Hughie's sake. In the world of The Boys, where nearly all the superheroes only help people to advance their own careers and to garner self-serving fame, that kind of sacrifice, however small, is rare. It's the kind of thing that Soldier Boy, Homelander, and even Butcher can't really do, as they usually only obsess over themselves and their own goals. Soldier Boy may view himself as completely different from the pathetic neediness of Homelander, but at the end of the day, they're both cut from the same sad cloth. I guess we'll have to wait until next season to see if the same can be said about Ryan. So, this season is over, but if you're still in a thinking way too much about superheroes mood, I can't recommend Grant Morrison's Supergods highly enough. This was a great listen, and is some of the most insightful writing about the superhero genre I've ever listened to, and you can download it free right now. Of course, that's just part of Audible's massive library. The Audible catalog is always expanding, so there's something new to check out whether you're into fiction, biographies, self-help, and way more. Lately, I've been loving their Music Plus Words series, which is all thanks to their Plus catalog, which manages to go far beyond audiobooks and features great audio content in all sorts of formats, including podcasts. It's a good deal, made even better by the fact that I can download and then listen to them whether my phone is online or not. You can get a free Audible credit now by going to audible.com/midnight or texting midnight to 500-500. That's audible.com/midnight, or just text midnight to 500-500.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.